Okay, welcome to the Apollo podcast with NetBrain today. We're talking about tools and innovation shaping the future of IT and networking. And today we are joined by Mark West, Willem Slok, and Dave Spence. So welcome. And today we are exploring how network visibility and automation are transforming in the operations together with NetBrain. So welcome all. May I start with you, Mark, for a short introduction about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Morning all. So I'm Mark West. I'm the channel manager for EMEA. So looking after our partner ecosystem and working with the likes of partners like APNT.
Yeah. Welcome.
Yep.
Willem?
Willem Slok, CEO and founder of APNT, been working in the network industry for almost 40 years now. So a lot of experience in the field and also, familiar with the NetBrain implementation as such.
Yeah. No, good to have you here. And Dave Spence?
Yeah, I'm Dave Spence, Senior Pre-Sales Engineer at NetBrain. So I've been at NetBrain for, my goodness, nearly 6 years now. And I help enable and train the partners.
Oh, cool. Now, I think we have a good audience, right? To have a good conversation for the next couple minutes to have a good conversation with each other. Maybe for everybody who's listening and hearing this podcast, but maybe start with you, Mark. For those who are not really familiar with NetBrain, can you explain in some simple words what is NetBrain? Who's NetBrain?
Yeah, sure. So NetBrain is an automation platform for hybrid networks. And the way I like to look upon it is there's 4 key areas where we work with customers, almost such like a journey as such. The first one being visibility. So when customers come to us, we provide them a platform that allows them to turn the lights on across their network. So being able to draw a map of all their devices, understanding where all their devices are across that network, where be quite surprised actually. A lot of customers don't actually know where everything is. So we have that first piece of the puzzle. And then secondly, it's about reducing MTTR by automating the troubleshooting, so the workflows that customers are providing. And that really helps with reducing the human touch within the network when there's issues and problems and getting that MTTR up. And then thirdly, we provide sort of assessments, so, network-wide assessments. And that gives sort of our customers the observability at any point in time across the network. So if there's any issues, they can instantly find that. And they have that kind of confidence around their network if anything goes wrong for them. And then the fourth thing we do is we give customers confidence around change. So that's safe change, and that can be right from before they make a change, having that visibility across the network. During the change, understanding, making sure that no issues are happening during that time. And then after the change as well, and making sure we can cut out any unintended issues in that time. So that's kind of in simple terms, the 4 pieces that we bring to the table.
Oh wow, no, that's good, Mark. It is a good explanation who NetBrain is. Anything to add to that, Dave?
No, I mean that's pretty good, really. I mean it's about automation, really. I mean it's almost like, I would argue in simple terms, it's almost like having an operating system for your network. Yeah. So if you think about, if you've got a computer, yeah, you've got your human being who's using your computer. Yeah. But imagine if rather than having a nice operating system and having Windows, you had to put all the machine code in to use the graphics card or to use the printer and stuff like that. What a nightmare that would be. Well, actually, you're asking your network ops teams to do pretty much the equivalent of that today. Yeah. So actually, NetBrain is more like an operating system. It sits there between you and your network, and it really helps you automate that and helps you operate.
Yeah, and from your side, Willem, because you told us in the beginning you work with NetBrain for a reason, right?
Yeah, well, engineers normally tend to know it all, so they know the network, and that's also where the problem is, because if the network engineer is not there, you're relying on a lot of experience of some special persons, but NetBrain will take it away for you and will give you a good insight of how the network looks like, how the configuration should be, and indeed to reduce the MTTR, you can very fast find an issue in your network path.
Yeah. No, that's great. And what I really like about is that visibility part, right? Because I think still a lot of our organizations don't have any idea what they have, right? And how can you maybe automate it or if you don't really having the visibility. And to jump on that, okay, what makes it currently in the current state where companies are so important, right, and relevant to do and have NetBrain, right, in their network operations. Maybe good for you, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, we're using networks now for things that we never envisaged would use them for 20 years ago. So if you go back, say, when I first started in IT, and I'm showing my age now, if you go back to the 90s, yeah, if your IT network went down, it was back to pen and paper for a while. I mean, the emails were down and whatever, but the businesses were generally fine. Now everything runs across the network. All of your critical business applications run across the network. Just think about it, video and stuff like that. Everything runs across the network. So some of my customers, their business they wouldn't be able to do anything if their computer networks went down. So actually being able to fix things, being able to do all the network operations is more important than ever. But actually, the networks themselves have become horrendously complicated compared to as they were. I mean, if you go back to when they weren't actually that important, at least they're easy to use and easy to maintain. Yeah, it's mainly old Cisco routers and switches. But now you've got SDN, you've got SD-WAN, you've got public cloud, you've got load balancers, you've got all of these complicated networks with lots of different vendors and lots of different types of technologies. And even if they're all Cisco, yeah, they'll have things like Checkpoint and Fortinet and lots of different types of vendors for their firewalls. So what you've got two things almost fighting against each other. You've got the networks are more important than they've ever been, but also they're much more complicated than they've ever been. So actually the jobs of your NetOps team in terms of doing things like documentation, troubleshooting, compliance, all of that stuff is much more difficult. And you've got this swivel chair approach when there's a problem where I've got to use this tool for my AWS network. Oh my goodness. And I've got to do this for my ACI and then I've got my file. Oh, and can I remember what command to use from a Checkpoint file? Oh, it's different from help. It's different from a Fortinet. So it's all very complicated. So actually the stress and the workload on your NetOps teams is greater than ever before, and the implications of getting it wrong are ever before. Yeah, and if the network's down, then the business is going to lose money. That's why having something which is an automation platform to actually help with all of that is really important.
Yeah, and the people part will probably come further in this podcast, right?
Yeah,
because people our companies are short in that, right?
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing as well, actually, which is interesting. Is when I first started in networking, about 20 odd years ago, I was one of these bright young things. Everyone was a similar age to me, getting into networking. Yeah, and we're all these young lads getting into networks. But now you go to these typical conventions like AutoCon and all of these different exhibitions, and the networking guys, we've all grown up together. You're not getting all these young lads now out of university and young girls out of university. They're going into these more fancy areas of technology. They're not going into networking. So there actually is a shortage of network engineers. So again, you're right. Your network engineers now are having to do more than they used to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's much more pressure. So actually having a tool like NetBrain, which can actually not only make things quicker, yeah, but can make a network engineer do a lot more. Yeah, and make him a lot more efficient. That's actually really helpful.
No, I think, and you're highlighting a great point, right? Because network have changed over the last couple of years, right? I think we see the cloud adoption, for example. We see hybrid work, remote users. Everything is more complex than, let's say, 20, 30, 40 years ago. And in that case, I think companies need to think about how to automate their network and how important it is, and maybe more important than ever. Mark, what is?
Yeah,
how do you see that from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we touched on a few points there, and networks aren't what they used to be. They're not the traditional networks that we used to work with 20 years ago. It's all cloud and hybrid, and it's more complex. So we need more knowledge, more skills to be able to manage these. The operational side of it is more complex. So companies are looking at a way that they can start to automate the process. How can they start to fill these gaps that they have, and as Dave mentioned, around sort of the skill shortage of network engineers. So that's where NetBrain sort of becomes important in today's organizations, is that we're now allowing organizations to sort of shift left, as it were. So what traditionally a level 1 engineer would do, we can shift those job roles left and start automating them. And then that level 1 engineer can step up and start doing what level 2 engineer would do. Level 2, pushing up the ladder to the more important jobs, and therefore making things more efficient and getting more from your resource. When we're looking at people with smaller teams being asked to do more with less, and that's often the challenge we see from customers.
Yeah. And how do you see that from your perspective, Willem? Because you said in your introduction you already have many years experience in all kind of verticals. You worked yourself with NetBrain, you really was the guy who did the programming on that, right? So we see more and more companies getting too complex. Maybe distributed environments, change networks, and these kind of things. What is your experience on that?
As a network engineer, I've been working in different roles, also in design roles, and also in maintenance role. If you got called up when there's a problem, but if you work as a designer engineer, you have time to design and test the network in a test lab. But if that's done, that design is done, it's being transferred to operations. And then you have the network as engineers that do the daily work, and then they get into problems that on the network that they're not really familiar with new things, new technologies, and most of the time you also see a split in experienced people in routing and switching, maybe in firewalls, load balancers. There are different teams. So if you're being called up, there's a problem, it doesn't work. It can be anything. And normally everybody's pointing to the network, but the question is it really the network? Because it can also be a server. The application runs on a server, then it talks to a network stack, and then it connects to the physical network. But if you have a tool like NetBrain, that's much more easy because everything is in that system as a digital twin. So you just select, your source, where the request is coming from, to the destination where the server, which is in the data center, and it will plot out on that system where the problem is. If it's in a firewall, it will show you it's on a firewall. It's that rule that's blocking the traffic. So that helps a network engineer who is called up in the middle of the night to solve a problem, that he really has the tools to find the problem fast and point it out to the proper teams to solve it.
Yeah, it's a great example. Yeah. And how do you see that from your side, Dave? Because you're not only acting in the Netherlands, right? You're coming across Europe, different customers. You're talking to different people. What do you see as the biggest challenges that currently customers have, and how do they try to manage it? Are you agree with them? Do you say the same things?
Yeah, we see. From the things I hear a lot from my customers, it's things like compliance, trying to do auditing across networks, and compliance is a lot more. Seems to be much more on the forefront these days than it was even a few years ago now. So you've got not just company requirements, you've got industry requirements, you've got government requirements. So actually doing that, being able to check an entire network, especially when it's multi-vendor, these hybrid networks, it's not just one vendor, it's lots of different types of vendors. Being able to do that is so time consuming. And this is where NetBrain comes in, because once you've got the compliance checking set up with NetBrain, then you could compliance check every hour if you want to, rather than the weeks and weeks of time it can take to do manually. But also things like lots of different types of networks to manage. So again, we were talking about it here, but just think about it from the NetOps point of view, all of the training. It used to be the case. I remember when I first started in IT, where having a CCIE, it meant you were the guru. You knew all there was to know about networking. Yeah. Well, now it's actually not quite as prestigious, perhaps, is the right word for that, but it's not as helpful as it was before, because actually that's fine, but actually that doesn't tell you about Azure, it doesn't tell you about AWS and things like that, because now you've got all of these different types of technologies and vendors. So actually there's that element as well as a complexity or as a challenge. If you're a network engineer, it's not enough just to know about, say, Cisco. You need to know about Fortinet, perhaps, Checkpoint, software-defined networks, software-defined WANs. Yeah, and this is where an automation platform. This is where automation is becoming much more important. Yeah, because actually you've got this buffer between yourself and the actual network to take care of that complexity. Yeah, so I've got a routing problem. Okay, show me where the routing problem is, please, NetBrain. It will just do it for you, and it will tell you. Yeah. So again, that's pretty important, actually.
Yeah. And I'm always a big fan around examples, right? You probably have seen customer examples. You work with the customer examples. Are there any stories, Mark, maybe to share on that, right? Financial industry.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the important thing here is that network issues are across any industry in any sector.
Yeah.
We can't sort of point the finger. I mean, our customer base really is widely spread. Really focused on sort of the more complex, the more issues people can have. So, a couple of examples come to mind. What we get to see is the issues they have before coming to NetBrain, and then obviously the results afterwards.
Yeah.
So, one example was a customer, global broadcaster. They were currently broadcasting, a live sporting event, across the world, and they had an outage in that time. So, the impact of that was huge. So every venue that was showing this game that they were broadcasting, they were responsible for, that mean time to repair was so critical for them. And it actually took them about 15 minutes. So this was before NetBrain. So it took them about 15 minutes to get up and running. But within that time, the reputational damage was huge. The costs and the fines from all the venues that were relying on them were massive. And also the impact it had on that customer. Millions were lost in fines following loss of earnings, for example, from that. But what we did with that customer is we looked at them before NetBrain and after NetBrain. The results is actually we brought their mean time to repair up by 70%. And the cost savings based on the incidents that they were having was over 18 million. So what we saw there is the cost of NetBrain, which was nothing close to that, of course. But it was completely covered very quickly. And that's what we often see with customers. Very similar to another example, which a global airline that we had. As you imagine, they have to be so efficient in running. And if something goes wrong, something goes down, then the impact from those customers, that outage is huge. So one of our major airlines, they came to us after a major incident. And it was actually based on a firewall change, which had brought down the network. And what that saw was all operational. There was a meltdown basically on the operations side of the network. There was 16,000 flights cancelled. There was actually a loss of 150 million for them. I mean, obviously the impact of that is huge, and because it's a flow effect, isn't it? One thing stops and it just continues. In terms of other airlines, different countries all gets affected by this. But we were looking at the actual sort of there was 2 million passengers that didn't get their flight those days as well. So again, the reputational damage. But now they're using NetBrain. They have that constant assessment, so they can it allows them to prevent those outages happening because they have that full visibility and that prevention side of things. Before an incident happens.
So it all comes back again to visibility, right? You're talking about business critical services, right? There are many of them.
Absolutely.
Maybe banking, financial institutions.
Well, I've got one of my customers. They're just an insurance company in the UK. Now in the UK, we everybody gets their insurance. We're not very loyal to our insurance companies in the UK. So every time it comes up for renewal, you go onto one of these price comparison websites, and you just go for that. You put in your car details and stuff all like that, or your house details, and you get the lowest quote. So actually, if the network is down for the insurance company at that particular point, then you've lost money. And so one of my customers, they for them it's absolutely crucial. So they have NetBrain, and what they primarily use it for, they do use it for compliance, but for them it's troubleshooting. So if there's a problem, the first thing they do is an A to B path, source to destination, or these are the devices. And actually for the different problems that they have, let's say BGP, OSPF, spanning tree, or whatever, they've got runbooks, which is just a way of automating the troubleshooting process, which they've created. So they just run through this. Oh, we think it's this. We'll run through this runbook. And actually, it massively reduces the mean time to resolution. It takes it down from hours to minutes using NetBrain. And that's really important for them because it's saving them money. That's what it's about at the end of the day, isn't it? So it saves them money, keeps them online. So rather than when somebody goes on to whatever one of these funny named price comparison websites, they can actually they go on and their site is live,
Yeah.
and so they're not losing out. So again, it's like I was saying earlier, networks are much more important now than they used to be. The consequences of your mean time to resolution being 4 hours or 15 minutes is huge.
Yeah. How do you see that, Willem? As you said, you worked in your daily operations with in the network. How do you see that?
Yeah, we just talked about compliancy. That's a thing. That companies need to be compliant, and most of the time that means a penalty if you're not compliant.
Yeah.
But I really want to talk a little bit more about consistency. I mean, if you implement a network day one, you add on things, you have changes, new networks, new connections, and that the consistency of that is really important because there needs to be redundancy in the network. And most of the time, if things are being done manually, people are people and forget things. And you will not see them until there's a problem with a connection somewhere with a provider, and then it needs to take the alternative part, and then it doesn't work.
Yeah.
But with NetBrain, you can look into that consistency. You can check against a golden configuration if everything is implemented correctly. Because as you say, the networking is getting complex, so it's very hard to find the differences or the things that are lacking in the configuration that makes sure that the network is always up and always available.
Yeah. I think you're making a good point there. So if things are changing, NetBrain.
Well, NetBrain is not a human, so it checks against something else, and it will find the inconsistency, and that's really important.
Yeah. And I think we already talked, right? Traditional network management tools are probably not there anymore, right? Because everything has so changed over the last couple of years. How do you see that, right? What makes NetBrain unique against standard?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked about it, about traditional networks and how they've been run, still being run like they were 20 years ago. And then when you're looking at traditional tools, what we find is that they can be just be sort of reactive. Basically, sort of, if there's a problem, they can tell you there's a problem, but they can't actually sort of help you solve that problem, or they can't tell you in advance. So what stands out with NetBrain is that it's proactive.
Yeah.
So you have the capabilities in the tool to be able to identify these potential problems before it happens. And when you look at the mean time to repair and avoiding outages, that's a massive difference. Making your organization more effective and running the network.
Yeah, but also it's a different approach as well. So if you think about your traditional network management tools, they will tell you when there is a problem. Yeah, but NetBrain, because it's got a full digital twin of the network, it understands exactly what's going on at the control plane level. Yeah. So it understands what the routing tables are, what the neighbor tables are. So if there's been, for the sake of argument, your OSPF neighbor relationship has changed between one device and another, NetBrain will be able to understand that. So it'll be able to go much deeper than your traditional tools. So a good analysis or a good analogy would be, if you imagine at home, you've got your smoke detectors. And so your smoke detectors in the house, they will tell you there is smoke, there is a problem. They go beep, beep, beep. They're really annoying, actually. You're making toast and they suddenly go off. Really annoying. But actually, they don't tell you that the problem is it's the toaster. They just tell you there's a problem. So they are like your traditional network management tools. Your NetBrain being vendor agnostic, and also the fact that it's an automation platform. Automation will say, well, actually, I'm going to go and check. Is there something in the toaster? Okay, is the toaster on? What's the color of the bread that's currently in the toaster? Is it a nice golden brown or is it black? Oh, well, let me go and check the hob. Do I have a pan on the hob? Is there any oil in the pan on the hob? Is it particularly hot? What's the temperature of the oil? Is the flames coming from the pan? So it will actually do all of that. It'll go around, and it's much deeper than an NPM tool, and that's the crucial difference. But better than that, you can then say, well, actually, now I've found this problem, I'm going to check for that in the future. So if I see my toast and my bread has gone a slightly darker brown, I'm going to create an alert based on that, which says, this is the button for turning off the toaster. Please press it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it makes your life easier, right?
Yes. But it's deeper, yeah? It goes further down to tell you this is where it differs. And this is why Mark was saying about it being proactive, yeah? Because it can then check again for those problems. Not just, actually, even better than that, yeah? Imagine a tool which could then say, I want to check for all the houses in the street, to see if they've got that same problem. Yeah. And NetBrain can do the equivalent of
where
that.
others stop, NetBrain goes deeper and further in that chain. Okay, cool. Important topic within customers also about cost savings. Is there something to say about that cost savings and NetBrain? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny actually because some of them are. I mean, you could argue from a time point of view, time is money. Yeah, so there's a few little stories here. So in terms of one of our customers in the States, they reduced their mean time to resolution from 4 hours down to 15 minutes. Yeah, for their P1 tickets. And again, there's money associated with that because if you're down, you're losing reputation. Yeah, you're losing, depending on what you're doing, you're potentially losing revenue. Another one of our customers, this is a good story. They implemented NetBrain and they used it to actually check, because we do an integration with SmartNet. So they could actually check which of their devices were end of support, end of life, stuff like that. And they realized that actually lots of their devices were now end of support and they were still paying for support on those devices. And so NetBrain pretty much just paid for itself just with that one report. Yeah, so again, it's about visibility. Yeah, you could argue there is a cost of not having visibility, really. But yes.
But finding the right people, right, in the market, right? I think it's not that easy, right?
No, and they're expensive as well. Network engineers, even now, and we're saying even though CCIE doesn't cover what it used to do, they're still expensive. Yeah, network engineers hiring extra NetOps people, and all the training that you've got to give them, that's expensive.
Yeah. Any comments from your side? On
I
that?
think that I mean there are people with the right certification, but I've done that track myself, in the past, so I know what it is, and it used to have real high value, and I think it still does. But there are more, different kind of expertises like AWS within cloud. There are people experienced in load balancers in firewalls, so there are different breeds of and also you have different tracks within Cisco or CCIE. It's not only routing and switching anymore. It's a diverse, track of different certifications. But I think it's important that as a network engineer, a NetOps engineer, that you have a tool that can pinpoint where the problem is, so you can direct the problem to the right people, and they can, be caught up or interfere. Or not interfere, but involve themselves in that specific problem and solve it. So having NetBrain as a tool implemented in the network operations area is really, my experience, really valuable.
Yeah.
So I've got a good example there actually. So we have a customer, we call him our endless customer because he's been to 4 different companies and each company's implemented NetBrain. And one of the situations he was actually on holiday with the family, and obviously the alert buttons all went off and everyone was calling him because he managed the networks. We've got downtime. This is really affecting us, and that downtime cost the company about 10 million in that time. What he was able to do was to nip up onto his laptop, jump onto the NetBrain platform, and identify where the problem was. Now, something you mentioned there in terms of finding out the right person responsible. Now, the suspicion was that it was it was a security issue. But the CISO was like, it's definitely not us. It's nothing to do with security at all. We're squeaky clean on this. And our customer was like, actually, it is the security issue. And he pointed directly to what the actual cause was. And they were like, okay, it is us. And then what happened on the back of that? And so he was able to solve that basically, literally nipping up from the pool, and it cost them 10 million. If it had been another hour, it could have been another 10 million. But then they ran some diagnostics through NetBrain after that and found out there was 7 other potential setups on the network where that issue could have happened again. So if it could have, instead of 10 million, it could have been 70 million. Yeah, there was a massive. You mentioned cost saving, a massive cost saving there. All because with NetBrain you can see it can be preventative of what the issues can be in the future.
Yeah. Something I would like to add is that if something is down, it's down. That's easy to pinpoint, but it's the intermittent problems. It goes down, it comes back again,
Yeah.
And you don't have a clue, because if you then troubleshoot, everything is working fine again. So also NetBrain can help you, to identify that historical problem, to pinpoint, what went wrong in the logging.
Uh,
So.
yeah. It's great to hear this. Yeah, Dave.
And that goes back to the digital twin as well, because I once heard somebody say, well, actually, surely if you've got you've got some sort of configuration management, everything should be fine. You should never have any problems with the network. But actually, computer networks are very complicated. And just because a device is configured correctly doesn't mean it's going to be functioning correctly, because something else on the network, because networks are dynamic, routing protocols talk to each other. So just because this device is absolutely perfect in terms of configuration doesn't mean it's going to be functioning correctly, because it might have learned to route an incorrect route from a device somewhere else and things like that. And it's because NetBrain has this digital twin, so it can fully understand the whole network and what's going on. It massively helps. Yeah, and you can do an A to B path and say, oh, hang on a second, this path is going that way instead of that way. And you can just see it visually.
Yeah, you have history as well. So you have the history, how it, the actual path, which was working fine, how that flows. And then you have, an alternative route, and then you can see that something is wrong.
Yeah. And then all in one dashboard again, right? And then it's measurable. Yeah. Now, great examples. And I think on that, looking a little bit ahead, right? What is happening in the next coming years, right? Or in the next few years? How is NetBrain preparing for the future? I know it's a difficult question to ask or to answer, but
yeah.
So just to sort of, from my point of view on there, so from our conversation today, I think it's sort of what's clear here is that customers need, not just automation, but they need intelligent automation. They need the real insights into their network, and that's something which NetBrain can obviously bring to the table here. But what we're also seeing is obviously on the AI side of things, customers now are looking for the right partnership, the right AI partner, and that's something which NetBrain is certainly moving forward with. And Dave, you might touch on that bit.
Yeah, I mean, AI has been certainly over the last year or so. It's been a big talking point. Actually.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody knows about things like ChatGPT and stuff like that. So I remember in the last release, we had our big NetBrain Live. When was that? It was a year. In fact, it was almost exactly a year ago. And that was the big thing. NetBrain was releasing its first attempt, well, it's a first integration, if you like, with AI. And that was very much AI as a co-pilot. So you troubleshoot, and you were still troubleshooting. It still required human knowledge. So we still used to use, what was the phrase we had? It was Paul's phrase. Human intelligence at machine speed. That's what he used. So you were still using AI. You were saying, AI, please map a path between this and this. AI, issue this command and look for that. So that was very much, if you like, AI as a co-pilot. So you were still driving it. It was human driven, but you were using AI to assist you. So in the new release, I've just come back from NetBrain Live in Boston. So it's the current release, to be fair. And AI is very much your partner. Yeah. And so with NetBrain now, you can say, oh, this is the problem I have, NetBrain. Please help solve this particular problem. So now AI as a partner can say, well, actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at all of these automations that I have so I'm going to interpret what you've asked. Then I'm going to use the built-in automations. I'm going to select the correct ones based on what you've asked. And then based on that, I'm going to do a summary for you and tell you based on that what the output is. But you've still got to interpret the summary. A human has still got to know what to ask for. But AI is now more alongside them. But that's where we are now. But again, going back to NetBrain Live, the next thing, because it's quite good, because I was only there a couple of weeks ago. The next step is very much more AI as an autonomous engineer. This is where we're going in the future. So rather than troubleshooting, if you like, being human driven, it's AI driven. So actually it's AI, which, if you like, autonomously knows which commands to issue, autonomously finding an answer from that and then taking the next steps and actually performing, if you like, a multi-step troubleshooting diagnosis to find the root cause, to be much more proactive.
And gives you recommendations, right?
Yes. Yeah. So it's more about reasoning intelligence now, rather than just being, and I think we call it deep diagnosis in the next version, which will be coming out.
Yeah. And I think we cannot step away. APNT is probably also doing a lot with AI, Willem.
We are doing a lot with AI development, but more in the area of test lab management. But we really got a good feeling on how that should work. And it's more like translating the human interactions into, let's say, machine code. It's like I said, is that a network engineer has his expertise. Most likely it's somewhere in routing and switching, but you have expertise in firewalls. And you have different types of firewalls, different commands. So if you have AI, that AI can, you can just put in a human question, get me the routing table of this firewall, or give me the firewall list that's is being applied to troubleshoot without having to have all the commands and also having access to the platform, because a lot of time when you are a routing expert, you only have access to that specific platforms and not the other platforms.
Yeah.
So you need to have another engineer with other credentials to go into that system. But with NetBrain, again, you can ask a question. And if you have an AI environment, you just can ask a human question, without having all the specific details to get the information.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that's a good benefit of implementing AI for the future.
Yeah, yeah. And
now, by the way.
Yeah, it's now. Yeah, yeah. And I think customers can see this, right? There's an opportunity to demo this in front of customers. I think APNT will be a partner to provide that. That's correct, right? There are opportunities to demo this in front of customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And we always say that get customers to do a demo, spend some time just with our engineers, actually see the platform. You really get to see the value it provides. And I think to what really sums it up nicely from my side is actually Dave's mentioned NetBrain Live, which we had a few weeks ago. I saw just yesterday one of our customers who went to that event. He posted on LinkedIn. He was having been there, and his quote was, "Give your network engineers NetBrain, it will change their lives." I thought that's quite a powerful message, coming from a customer.
Yeah. No, absolutely, absolutely. Anything we were missed in this podcast you like to share?
Yeah, I think one important thing to mention is that also that NetBrain keeps logging of all the incidents. So if you have a similar incident, it will point you to the solution as well. So I think that's also really powerful.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'd come back to that as well, because you were mentioning earlier actually about shift workloads left. One of the things it can also do, and again, AI can help you with this, is if you think about it, when you raise a trouble ticket, you go into whatever ticketing system you have, you raise a ticket and you say, this is slow. Somebody comes in. With NetBrain, automation, actually, and again, using AI, the ticket comes in and whatever ticketing platform you've got can actually talk to NetBrain. And NetBrain can use AI to look at the description in the ticket and do some initial diagnosis. And it can do that now. Yeah. So actually, when the first level engineer comes up, NetBrain's already been looking for past problems on those devices, known issues on the network and things like that. So it's ahead of the game, really, in terms of troubleshooting. Yeah. So, and again, think about that as well, that diagnosis has been done at the time the ticket was raised. So it's timely. It's like the old, again, I'm old. Yeah. The old television problem when I was a kid. The TV wouldn't work and mum would call out the TV repairman. But by the time he got there, the TV was working again. Yeah. But actually it's the same with a lot of IT problems. Yeah. You raise a ticket, but by the time somebody's opened the ticket and gone in and looked at it, for certain problems, especially if it's something complex, maybe a neighbor issue or something like that, the problem's changed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, if you've got NetBrain automation, which is actually looking at the problem as soon as the ticket's raised, then actually that's going to capture it very timely and not only just save the mean time to resolution as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, unfortunately, we're coming to an end with this podcast. I think it was a great conversation. I think we had a good talk, right, where we tell the customers, prospects, everyone how NetBrain makes their life easier, right? Especially the visibility part. I think that's a great point. And I want to thank you, Dave. I want to thank you, Willem and Mark, for giving your insight. if there are customers who still wants to understand something around NetBrain and APNT, I think the right way to go is netbrain.com, I think, and apnt.nl. Maybe it's good to follow them on the socials, right? LinkedIn is probably the best place for that. I like it. There will probably a lot of content shared there. Again, thank you all for participating in this podcast, and that really brings us to the end. Thank you for listening to the Apollo podcast, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.